all of it. Keep us on our toes, and we're just going to go right straight into that unless there's an announcement that someone would like to make. Cherie.
Tomorrow morning, the government affairs meeting right here.
That was an important announcement. You all got that. So here we go, and there's one thing that I have to ask of you. He would like you to talk into the microphone this morning. She would like you to talk into the microphone. So if we can do that, Andrew.
Yeah, just keep in mind what's great now is we're being filmed and the entire world can see us. So let's be heard. We have something to say. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests, press, esteemed Charter Review Commissioners, good morning and welcome to another beautiful day in Port Angeles. And we know here our beauty is unique. But you know what? Our form of county government is fairly unique in the country and not that common in the state of Washington. We are a home rule county. We have charter review. What does that mean? We, the citizens, elect representatives by our district, and they can forward policy changes to the county review for us to vote on. In a sense, we have a county where we, the citizens, through representation, are quasi-legislative. What are the amendments? Were there controversies or different sides to the ones being proposed? How did that come about? Today, not only do we have two commissioners that served on the executive board, but they tended to be a little opposite on their viewpoints on some of the amendments, which is why we asked them here today. So, how this forum is going to work, we're again counting on you, the membership, to get involved. Each of the commissioners will talk for several minutes just on any perspectives they have on the general process. Then we'll go through one amendment at a time, field any questions or concerns that the members have. Does everybody have or want a copy of the voter's guide with the script in there? So nicely applied. Supplied for us by the Peninsula Daily News. So with that, let's introduce the two commissioners. They're no strangers to this board, this group, or the county. Sue Forde, welcome. And Norma Turner, welcome. And I guess I have to designate somebody, so Susan, do you want to start off with any perspectives or issues you'd like to tell us beforehand?
How do you want to do this?
Hand you the microphone, you can start.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh, whatever.
There we go.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sue Forde, as Andrew said. I've lived here on the Olympic Peninsula for over 25 years. My husband and I live on acreage in Squim. I ran for the Charter Review Commission the last time, and I was elected and served, and I ran again this time and was elected. Thanks to you all with the most votes total overall. And the reason that I ran this time is because I've talked to a lot of people on the peninsula over the years and kind of gotten feedback about our home rule charter. We have a unique situation, one of 7 counties, as Andrew may have mentioned, where we have a home rule charter which gives us government closest to the people. And I like to quote Article 1, Section 1 of our state constitution, which says, all political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. That's what I ran on, that's what I was elected for, and so that has been the goal through the process of listening to citizens come before us, talking to citizens on the street, getting comments into the charter, and deriving from that the issues that will be before you on the ballot. there were many more issues that came before us. Many. In fact, last night was our last meeting that we had, and on the board there were probably 25 issues that we were unable to really get out onto the ballot. One of the reasons I think for that was because we had 8 years between the last Charter Review Commission meeting and this one. And that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing today on the ballot. The last time we had a lengthy time like that, I think there were 17 issues on the ballot. This time we have 8, plus we were carrying over several to next year. So with that, I will pass this on to Norma for an introduction, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Norma.
Where this goes. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. You are the first group in the county that has said we want to talk about the charter, so you get a gold star for at least caring about these amendments that are on the ballot. So I wanted to share with you, I'm Norma Turner. I've lived here since 1970. When we came, we put everything we owned on the line for my husband to start a small business. He was the first pediatrician in the entire county. In fact, when we first came here, the only pediatricians were in Bremerton. So it's been an interesting ride, and we're glad we're here. So I wanted to give you a little historical perspective on the charter. In that it was in 1889 that Washington State set up the current county governance system. And then in 1948, they passed a law which allowed for home rule charters. King County, and that was because they got pushed by King County. So King County was the first charter county, and that was in 1968. Interesting enough, Clallam County was the second charter in the state to become a charter county. And it's not been a big popular thing, because even now there's only a total of 7. There have been 7 counties that have tried to pass a home rule charter unsuccessfully. So the first thing that happened here was in 1975, they elected what they called freeholders, and they created the charter, and it was adopted in 1976, and it was accepted with 50.1% of the vote. So then the interesting thing to know is that there are different ways you can amend the charter. And in 1980, the first amendment was submitted by the commissioners, which they're allowed to do. Then in 1981, there were 3 amendments to the charter. Those all came about by citizens' initiatives. So having a charter review commission is only one way to amend the charter. You all have within the scope of your opportunities, you can amend it by promoting an initiative at any time. You don't have to wait for a Charter Review Commission if you think there should be a significant change. I have served on all but one of the charters. Some people think that's because I have a flat learning curve. But actually I do it because I really enjoy listening to what people want to have happen, and having some discussion about county government, because it's not really the general across the dinner table conversation. So I'm looking forward to addressing the amendments that we have on the table here. I do draw your attention, I hope that you all got this voter pamphlet, which came from the state, and that includes all the pros and cons for all of the charter amendments that were written by the Charter Commission members. So what do you want us to do with the mic here, Andrew?
So very good. We'll put the mic on the table. I'll read I'll read the first amendments. We'll go through them and see if we have any questions, concerns, comments. Amendment number 1. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning election of county commissioners to the Board of County Commissioners. This amendment would require each commissioner to be nominated and elected solely by their district. This is a change where now the commissioner is replacing the provision that allows each commissioner to be elected at large by countywide majority during the general election. So members, any questions or concerns on this amendment? Kai?
Did any of the commissioners provide testimony on whether they favor or oppose this amendment?
No.
That's correct. Not that I recall.
I would say that one of the proponents on the commission believed this should happen because of legal changes. There was a lawsuit over in Yakima that had the same system that we had, but it was the city council. And the court found against their process. But we asked the prosecutor to look into that, and he gave us a legal opinion that that had its own unique aspects about it that fell under the Voting Rights and Discriminatory Behaviors Act, and that we were not the same as the court case in Yakima. So there really was no similarity. So there is no legal precedent that says we need to go to districts only.
There has been discussion at the state level about having it go to district only. And as a matter of fact, a number of the majority actually of the home rule charter counties in our state are by district only. Not that that would mean we necessarily would go that direction because we are our own home rule charter. But that would be something to consider as well.
I would also point out that this is not the first time that that issue has been on the ballot. It has been on 2 other times and voted down both times. It was on the ballot in 1983 and it was on the ballot in 2003. For me, I oppose voting by district only because I think we're a small county and that is to our advantage to have when there are people running for a county commission that are going to be responsible for the entire county, to actually travel around and get to know the county. If you talk about district only, it means you'll have commissioners that will represent about 25,000 people instead of representing. So to me, it's the politics of small instead of big, and I think we want our commissioners to think big.
Susan.
I am a proponent for district-only elections. The Home Rule Charter Commission was elected by district only and served the entire county quite well. We have our legislators who are elected by district at the state level and at the federal level. And I firmly believe that we need to keep government closest to the citizens. Each of our 3 districts here in Clallam County have a different kind of lifestyle. More the Port Angeles area is more city. The swim area tends to be more retirement community, and so for the county commissioners to be elected at a district-only level will bring those perspectives more clearly to the whole, and I just think that's a better way to go.
So my final comment on that is that I have the opposing view, and that is simply, that will not surprise you, but anyway, that I believe that what unites us is our similarities. And everybody wants solid, good government. They want good roads. They want clean water. They want a public health system that works. And so I believe we should capitalize on uniting ourselves rather than pitting one district against the other. That one district is far more unique. I think every citizen in every district wants all of those basic services delivered at an equitable level. So I guess I just go with the politics of let's unite ourselves over our similarities.
And my concern would be, with a commission of 3, all votes are unanimous or 2-1. And it seems like the system now is fairly close to people, whereas, first of all, the county is where it starts in that district, so they have to go through a primary or be elected to begin with by their district. If that commissioner doesn't respond well to their district, certainly they risk being unelected the next round. But I really think that with only 3 people, you want them all to have a strong affiliation with the entire county. Was there any discussion about the size of the commission and how this may influence?
Yes. Every commission has talked about, should we have 3 commissioners or should we have 5? And what will happen is you start off with the concept that 5 sounds better, because now we have these problems with only 3 and 2 can't talk to each other because the Public Meetings Act and those concerns. what happens is a discussion goes along. We've never been able to come up with a clear consensus of what would 5 look like. Is it 5 full-time or 5 part-time? Is it 5 districts or is it 3 districts with 2 at large? So you begin to get into, the devil's always in the details, and the commissions have never been able to get past the details. So in the end, people have said, well, I don't know, we can't come up with that rule, and besides that, it costs more to have 5, and so every single time it starts out, and then it fades off, and then it has actually gone to the ballot, and has failed.
You also have the idea that the fact that we are a small county, the discussion that's come forward from many of the people who have talked about this issue is that we are a small county. We really don't need 5 commissioners. The expense of it is an issue as well.
Other comments on this First Amendment?
I like the 3 districts because I think they best represent the people. We've got a unique county. We have a retirement county, we have a working county here, for Ashland proper. And then you've got courts there. And right now I think we have pretty good representation. And I like the idea of those people, respective portions of the county, voting for specific representation. Because then the fellow like Bill Peach from Fort, he's really responsible for the West End there. He answers to those folks right there. Truly, he represents those. So I think overall we get better representation on our 3-member county commission.
Comments? Oh, sorry, Harry.
Question. Are we done?
Sure,
I
question.
have a question. I was waiting for that answer.
Yeah.
So my question is, when 2 people running for county commissioner work here, they both talk about this extreme politics we have. Both nationally, to do that, we need to be more pragmatic and all that kind of stuff. So my question for you is, how would each of the alternatives I guess address that issue of polarization?
I don't think that there would be any difference in that regard, whether it's elected by county at large or by district. Where the major difference is, in my opinion, is when a commissioner is elected by district, they are responsible to the people of their district in addition to looking at the issues of the entire county. The entire county will affect their district, obviously. They do that pretty much now. I know that our commissioner is responsive to us in District 1. I live in District 1, and I'm sure that that's the case with the other 2 districts. The main difference is that in District 1, if we elect our commissioner, he is more responsible to us. And if he's elected by the county at large, that gives the county more control, really, the other 2 districts, more control over that particular commissioner. And so he could win the primary in the district and lose the general because he's not well known, possibly. He's known to his constituents in his district, his or her district.
I would have, obviously, the opposite view. That right now, at Sue's example, what District 1 is they get 2 commissioners that were chosen in a primary by the primary voters in District 1 only. So no matter which one wins the general, they were basically approved at the primary level. I would also say that I think when you start dividing up into smaller pieces so that each commissioner only has to worry about the folks in his district, then in answer to your question, Harry, I think it increases polarization. Because if you look at how does the county run, the road department covers the whole county. The health department, the whole county. So why wouldn't we have commissioners that each one of them cover the whole county? And are forced to actually go to Forks and Sequim and wherever it is when they're running. So if they're from Sequim and they only have to run in their district, they never have to go to Forks. They don't have to show up in Fort Angeles. As long as they hang in with their own district, that's all they need. And I just think it limits the scope. So I'm ready for 2, I think.
You could use the example of the Home Rule Charter Commission in that regard. And the Home Rule Charter Commission is elected by district. And yet the Home Rule Charter Commission looks at the entire county. So it's not polarized at all. Better representation closer to the people.
But we also, the Charter Review Commission does not do policy. County commissioners do policy, which is far greater and overarching. And we have no authority to do anything on the charter review except to talk about things and put them on the ballot. We have no real decision-making in terms of, the voters have the ultimate decision-making. The Charter Review Commission has a very different role than the commissioners. Thank you.
Any other comments on this one? Since we always have an opinion here in the PABA, I'd be interested in a quick straw poll. Who supports this amendment and wants to raise their hand? Who is against this amendment? Okay, hopefully we can see why this one is going to be controversial. On to number 2. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning the frequency of county review in its Home Rule Charter. This amendment would require Clallam County to review its home rule by electing commissioners to serve every 5 years instead of 8. So we're discussing decreasing the time of review from 8 to 5 years. Comments?
Not surprisingly, Sue and I voted differently on this. As I mentioned, there are 7 other charter counties. 6 of them review their commission every 10 years. So even at 8, we're doing it more often than other people do. Secondly, this has been on the ballot 6 times. How often should we review our charter? The last time it was on the ballot for 8 years, it was about 60% of the folks said yes, 8 years is fine. So I don't understand why we keep, every commission revisits this issue. And more importantly is that you do not need to have a charter review commission in order to amend your charter. You can do it on your own, and as I mentioned in my introduction, it's been done 4 different times by a commissioner. So if you have an issue, such as later on we'll get on, some of these are housekeeping measures. You didn't need a charter review commission to come up with housekeeping measures. The commissioner should just have put that on the ballot as a housekeeping measure. So I just believe, and I don't think any of you here would want to have a group amend the U.S. Constitution every 5 years or the Washington State Constitution every 5 years. The charter is Clallam County's Constitution.
Sue, why is a quicker review better for the citizens?
There's several reasons. Number one, a lot of people in the county don't even know what a home rule charter is, and we have a constant influx of folks coming in. It's a very important document and one that needs to be put out there. People need to be educated about it. So having more frequent reviews will help with that. But primarily, the number of issues that are discussed before the Home Rule Charter Commission are great. Over the years, we have had several amendments, and every time it's been amended, I'll just run this down. In 1976, when the charter was originally created, it was set up for a 5-year review. In 1981, it changed to a review every 7 years. In 1983, it went back to 5 years. In 1994, the review stayed at 5 years. And in 2003, it went to, in 2003, that went on the ballot to change to every 10 years, and that failed. In 2007, it passed at 8 years. So it's been tried, the longer period has been tried. When there is a longer period, there were far more issues on the ballot. Far more issues. I believe 17 issues in the 2 years. That's a lot of issues. And it's a good thing for people to be able to come to interconnect with their government. The Charter Review Commission serves that purpose. We're closest to the people as far as being able to have people come, discuss what their issues are. Gives a great outlet for people to get involved in their government at a closer level to themselves. And fewer issues go on the ballot as a result.
I would just argue that's not really statistically right, because the first time it was reviewed, it was a shorter time and there were 9 on the ballot. This time there's only 8. So the number of issues that go on the ballot is really up to whether or not the commission, how many minutes they want to bite the bullet, and how many things they want to put on the ballot. I mean, you always have an opportunity to put 25 if you want to, but most people try and constrain. So I really don't see that there is a direct relationship at all between the number of years between reviews and the number of issues that go on the ballot.
Anything else to add, Sue, before we go to member comment? Members, any questions, concerns? Hi, I know what you're coming on you.
The question of the stability valve or other means in the charter running. When was the last time there was a commissioner-initiated amendment on the ballot, and when was the last time there was an initiative amendment on the ballot?
Way back then, when I told you that in the beginning.
Just the beginning, not
That's
in
right.
the last 10 or 15
Right.
years.
But it's still an option. You still could do it. You could still petition the commissioners to put something on the ballot. In fact, I'm always surprised at the level that the Charter Review puts things on the ballots that are really technically little housekeeping measures. For example, in 2016, you're going to vote on the issue of amending the language so no party preference, which is the new thing to do. It has to go on by the charter. I mean, that's what the state law says. The commissioners should have put it on years ago. So.
The process by which initiatives and referendums are placed on the ballot are onerous compared to the Charter Review Commission. It's much easier for people to wait until a Charter Review Commission to bring the issues to the commission. They're discussed, debated, and then go on the ballot. There's no having to go out and collect signatures, which is very challenging. Having run an initiative, I can speak to that personally. And then you have the entire process that you go through, which isn't a bad thing, because it's good that we have the initiative and referendum process in our charter, but it's just a simpler process for people to be able to interact with government and discuss the possible changes that they'd like to see made, some of which get placed on the ballot, some of them don't, but at least they can bring it, discuss it, and express their opinions. And quite frequently, and this commission has done this, a number of the suggestions that have come forth from the people have been forwarded to the county commissioners for possible action.
Yeah, I know, Kai, that you were specifically talking about amending the charter, but I will give you a more recent example. There was a group of citizens who wanted to see the Port Commission terms reduced from 6 years to 4. And they simply created a petition, went out and got a bunch of signatures, and were ready to think about putting it on the ballot, went to Port Commissioners and said, we can put this on the ballot or you can. And if you put it on the ballot, it saves some money, because the auditor's office is going to have to hire people to look at all the names and validate them. And so because the numbers were substantial, the Port Commissioner said, okay, we'll put it on the ballot. We did, and 80% of the people voted yes to reduce the terms to 4 years. So, I mean, and people, I think the initiative process is a good one because it forces you to get out and talk to people and have a community discussion. So I think there's some real pluses in asking change to come about by that citizen activism level.
Right. Other member comments?
Do you get an idea of the number of unique individuals that provide testimony or written comments to the commission, so we get a feeling for those people influencing your decisions, how big that that population was?
What was the
Very,
experience?
very, very small. We had just a few, and then we had a few folks who came a lot. We had, I think I counted, there were 6 people that had a total of 23 times they gave us input. And so because the number was so low as the people that actually came to our meetings, our first public hearing in Forks, I think, had nobody. And then, and we have some very low numbers. So that's why we went to a public survey to try and expand the input. And we did get 1,024, I think, surveys. We sent out 30,000, but we really saw it as an education tool, let people know that there was a charter review commission, what we are considering, asking for their input. And I was on another charter, that's what we did also. We sent out a questionnaire because, frankly, people don't show up much.
Besides the survey, was there a number of electronic or letter comments, written comments?
People, no, that counts as input. Yeah, we got emails, we got some, but and when you look at a population of 70,000 people, it was a very minuscule turnout as far as I was concerned.
Sue, anything to add on participation?
Yes, we had 15 elected commissioners, and each of us were out talking to our communities, getting input from citizens on a one-to-one basis. At least I can speak for that. And some of the other commissioners I talked to were doing the same thing, getting out there talking to their communities, because not everybody wants to or can come to publicly testify. But that's, I believe, why we are out there, to gather this information and bring it back to the commission for debate.
This organization did go through the process, and we did give you a letter, and we did have input all along. We get another gold star.
Other comments on this amendment?
So I have a little comment about it, and I'll throw this out to you. How many of you have gotten a new cell phone in the last 5 years? Things happen fast and change all the time. And if we don't stay current with our charter, you know, it just keeps you behind the 8 ball. So think about how quickly things change.
The rebuttal I make to that is I look at what's on the agenda, and I see a lot of revisiting of old issues, and I see a lot of housekeeping issues. And so I'd be curious from the two speakers as to what are the big things that really changed in the last 5 years that are being addressed?
Not much. And actually, I was very disappointed, and then maybe you can invite us back to talk about this later, that last night was our final meeting. And in August, there was a vote of 10-4 that we should consider putting an ombudsman program into Clallam County. People have an opportunity to have a citizen complaint. So, and by 13-1, they voted to set up a subcommittee to create that. So we met as a subcommittee, and Snohomish and King County both have what's called an Office of Citizen Complaint. And they have a great track record, and very, very few things ever go to litigation. It's sort of a way of using mediation, just having people, if they can vent, usually they're not going to get the next step. So we did a lot of homework. We presented a substantive presentation, and a whole bunch of folks didn't show up last night, and we ended up with a 5-5 vote. Tie means it fails. So the one opportunity to make a substantive change to Clallam County government failed at last night's meeting. So I'd like to have us come back sometime and talk about the concept of an ombudsman.
Sue, your thoughts?
I would comment in the debate, which was lengthy last night, about that issue. The subcommittee did good work. However, it was very broad, and it would have been expensive to set up another layer of bureaucracy at the county level to have this department with a director, albeit a part-time director, but he would be allowed to hire people. So as a compromise to that, Commissioner Rod Fleck put forward the idea of sending to the county commissioners to set up a citizen's complaint situation, so that at least that will be done. But they can do it in a manner that if it doesn't work, they can change it. Whereas if it were in the charter itself, it's unchangeable until such time as the next charter meets, or somebody does an initiative or referendum to change it. So I believe that we got the best out of that as far as accomplishing the goal of the people that wanted to have some kind of an ombudsman program. We'll see how it works, and then it could be revisited at the next charter to see.
How many items overall did you all look at during the process that maybe needed more time or got pushed aside?
The items that went on the board at the end for discussion, I believe were around 22 or 24, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And that some of those items actually were raised by single individuals, so it was not a great community outcry.
So as we move on, members help me on this one. I'm on the fence. Let's do straw poll number 2. Who thinks that 8 years is a good time for the cycle of review? Raise your hand. Who thinks going to 5 is more beneficial? You're on the fence like me. I'm going to combine, perhaps, unless our commissioners here think otherwise, amendment number 3 and 4, because the only difference is one word: initiatives and referendums. So it reads, the Clallam County Charter Review Commission process proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning the Board of Commissioners' participation in transmitting citizens' initiatives, or number 4, transmitting qualified referenda. This amendment would require, to be proposed directly to the voters without prior consideration, adoption, or rejection of the Board of Commissioners. So maybe if you could first start by telling us the difference on initiatives and referendums and the purpose on splitting these two. And what happens if we have one pass and one fail?
Well, then you'll have one pass and one fail. So you'll have initiatives doing one thing and a referendum doing another. It is split for a technical reason, and that is state law says you can only address a single issue. So the prosecutor said you can't put initiatives and referendums in the same. So we split for that very technical reason. Okay. The rest, and the definition, initiative just is an action that is generated at the local citizen level of something you want to see happen. A referenda is a response to an action that has been taken and you don't like what they did, and then you file a referendum to overturn it.
And Sue, was the larger group pretty much in favor of both of these, or how did that split come up?
You mean the split between the two issues?
Or I guess, is there controversy within the 50-member Charter Review Commission on these two?
There's always controversy. What this amendment would do is bypass, right now, what takes place when an initiative is run and the signatures are confirmed, it then goes to the county commissioners. The county commissioners are supposed to hold a public hearing, and then it goes to the voters. There was an instance a number of years ago where that did not happen. An initiative came to the county commissioners, and instead of holding a public hearing as the charter called for, they instead sent it to the courts. And so this is partly the reason that this has come up. The initiatives should go directly to the people. Once they've gathered the signatures, taken the trouble to gather the signatures, get them confirmed, and comply with everything, it should be allowed to go to a vote of the people. Every other charter county does have directly to the people. And in my opinion, government closest to the people is the best government, and that would accomplish this goal.
Actually, this is an interesting one. I originally voted yes, and now I think maybe I'm voting no. I'm so morphing into a different view. Basically, there is the reason that the freeholders had this process of going to the commissioners is sort of, I guess Sue gave you the primary example, that there was an initiative and it went to the commissioners, and so they sent it off for legal review, and it was found to be that it was not legally not going to work. So I believe what it did is it saved us all a lot of money and time, because if it had gone directly on the ballot and then it passed, and then you had had a legal challenge and it would have been turned down. I mean, that's a huge wasted time and energy. So passing through the commissioners, you at least have another way to look at it, and it also gives them an if there's, just as example with the port, when the port commissioner saw that there was a great outcry and people wanted to reduce to 4 years, then they put it on the ballot. You basically could have the same thing happen, signatures, and that goes to the commissioners. They would have an opportunity to implement that as a policy or an ordinance, whatever they want to do, and not go to the ballot, but use that as an opportunity to change what they're doing. So I have morphed into deciding that perhaps there is a reason.
But doesn't the word qualified kind of presume that it's going to be legal?
No.
Constitutional?
No.
So you can
Anybody can have an initiative about anything, and the way you'll notice right now that one of the initiatives, state initiatives, taken to the court, and the court said you can proceed, and that happens time and again. It's voted on, and people think it's going to happen, and it goes to the court, and the court says it's unconstitutional. It's a huge waste of time and money, and I think we just need some mechanism to find out if it's legal. Then when you vote on it, you know for sure it's going to get implemented.
In the case in point, the attorney had said, I'm sorry, not the attorney, the auditor had agreed that this was a viable initiative. When it went in, when the county commissioner took it into the courts, it went through the court process all the way up to just below the state Supreme Court. So it did not avoid that court fight, as it would have may have done had it gone to the actual ballot. And it may or may not have passed either, you know, but the people should have a voice.
And so, whether it's legal or not, it's an interesting question, but my bigger concern is that if the Board of Commissioners could just carte blanche reject an initiative, doesn't that, in a sense, shortchange the voting public?
Absolutely. That's why this is on the ballot.
And it could be construed that way.
John.
Yes. I would maintain that we already have a process by the elections we have for our county commissioners and our state representatives and all the elected officials we have up and down the line. Why do we, well, again, I very seldom support the initiative of a referendum. I figure that should be the job of our elected officials. Could you comment on how, in our charter schools, as an example, something that's gone amok, that was supported by the people, but yet it was found not to be illegal? Wouldn't it be better to have our elected officials vet these issues and be responsive to the people at the next election, as opposed to this method of circumventing the elected officials?
I think that's a discussion for another whole day, John. You raise an interesting point. You know, it is a system that it has its pros and cons, and I think it does also have its flaws. And I think this issue of not being able to vet the legality of it before it goes in the ballot is one of its biggest flaws. Its positives is that it generates citizen involvement and discussion about issues. So I think it's, you know, life is like that. We have flaws in most of our lives.
Ideally, I would agree with you. However, there are situations where our electeds are going against the will of the people, and the people should have another recourse, which is why we have our initiative referendum process to fall back.
Back in the corner for one more comment.
So since this was brought up by a case where the initiative didn't make it through commissioners, can you tell me how many other cases like that have occurred versus how many have gone through without problems? So how big a problem is it? Is it once? In 20, 30 years?
Once. You want that on the mic?
No, I don't.
Once.
Once is enough.
All right, now let's move to the number of days to get these on the charter. Amendment number 5, the Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Charter concerning the time period to gather signatures for citizen initiatives. This amendment would increase the time to gather signatures for initiatives from 90 days to 120. Thought process on the extra 30?
You just hit a common founding. We both say yes, don't we, Cherie?
record that.
Got it.
Doc of Chuck.
Now then we agree.
Do any members here think that 90 is the appropriate time to keep it? With that, then we're in unanimous consent too. Which is good, because now we'll move to one that probably the business association more than any other group may be keenly interested in. Amendment number 6. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning the Director of the Department of Community Development. By the way, we're the only one elected in the country. This amendment would require the DCD Director to become an office appointed by the Board of County Commissioners instead of an office elected by the voting public at large. Thought processes on this one.
Okay, I'd like to give a little historical perspective. That helps in context of today. The election of electing the DCD director was first on the ballot in 1983, and it failed with a 64% no vote. It was then placed on the ballot a second time in 2003, and it had a 57% yes. So that's when we started. So what happened between 1983 and 2003 to have that kind of shift? Well, what happened is that we had in 1990 the State Growth Management Plan, which caused some consternation. And so those who were concerned about that had some hopes that if you elected a DCD director, an elected official would figure out how to work around that state plan. And so there were some real changes in what was going on. So then in 2007, they attempted to return it to an appointed position, and that failed. And so now it's back on the ballot. So what has happened? Why are we on it? Why are we back to it again? In 2007, one of the reasons it failed is because we had DCD directors and there had been no kerfluffles. Nothing had gone wrong. There were no dismays. So nobody saw any reason to change it. Now what we've had is we've had some kerfluffles, and you saw that in the last campaign. And now we have Mary Ellen Winborn, who's well respected in that office. But I consider it was an experiment. It's always nice to try new things. But we have had an elected DCD now for 12 years. And then the last DCD, the county spent upwards of $100,000 on an investigation of things that had gone wrong. That wouldn't have happened if it had been an appointed position. We could have done it in a different way. It would have been far less expensive. But most of all, I like to go to people who have been there, done that, and have experience. And in our Charter Review Commission meetings, 3 of the last 4 elected DCD directors came to us and said this should be an appointed position. Rob Robertson was the first elected DCD, and he very much is a proponent of an appointed position. John Miller was elected, and he is a proponent of appointing. And Mary Ellen Winborn, the current DCD director, testified to us she believes it should be an appointed position. So I don't know about you, but if I'm going to go visit a country, I like to talk to somebody who's been there. So I don't know how to run that office, but I think people who are elected to run it and after they were in that position said it really should be appointed, I take that seriously.
Of course they'd like it appointed, then they don't have to run for office. Local control. Historically, Norma gave one side of the history, I'm going to give another. One of the main reasons that this position went to an elected position was because the DCD director, who happened to be in there at the time, and his department were doing things to citizens that were way beyond the norm. And there was no recourse. The county commissioners wouldn't reprimand him, wouldn't fire him. He kept his job. I don't know how many of you remember Andrew Nesbitt. He was a former 24th legislative representative. He wrote a letter, and this kind of tells you the story, and I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts from it. This was written in 2001, before it went to an elected position. At this meeting, he met with the DCD director. He said, "At this meeting, I was shocked to be blatantly informed by the department staff that any property owner in Clallam County who owns land that has on it a critical area or critical area buffer is responsible to restore that land to a pre-mankind condition. No matter what has happened to that land over the years, they claim the current owner is responsible for any and all alterations that have taken place since the arrival of man here on the peninsula at the end of the Ice Age." Skipping further down, it is further stated that the staff has the power, and they would be the ones to determine just what pre-mankind condition is, and they have the final word on how its restoration will be accomplished. The letter goes on from there. It's online, or you can read it yourself. It's quite revealing as to the mindset of that department at that time. It went on the ballot. It got passed to have this be an elected position, which is more an administrative position, like the treasurer, the auditor, that type of thing, oversees the department. Gives us local control, gives us the citizens the opportunity that if a person is not taking care of the citizens first, that person can be voted out and somebody new can be elected in. We've had good DCD directors overall. The nice thing about it is, if we get a DCD director who is not doing their job, in 4 years they're gone. The other thing is the financial. It saves the county money to have an elected position rather than hiring somebody from somewhere else who doesn't know our custom and cultures in this area for big bucks with a big balloon payment at the end. So there's a lot of pluses for having an elected position. The people have voted twice for it. The people know what they're saying, know what they're doing, and so I believe this will pass quite handily again.
Before I go to
Be
member
rejected.
comments
This will
and
be
concerns,
rejected.
Madam Chairman, I move pertinent to our bylaws, we extend the meeting up to 15 minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I messed up Robert's Rules of Order, Andrew, but I got it done quickly.
I'll second it.
Hand nodding or has a question?
Okay, I just want to make one clarifying statement about this ballot issue. That if people vote to go back to an appointed position, Mary Ellen Winborn will complete her term before that happens. So this is not a deposed Mary Ellen Winborn behavior. I think we all like her. In fact, most people I know like her. So this would not take place until her term ends. That's just a
And you
clarifying.
concur with that generalization too, right, Sue?
Yes.
This is not anything having to do with the current director. This is a governmental procedure referendum.
That is correct. And to keep the position elected, which would mean that you reject Amendment 6, would keep that position accountable to you.
Okay, and members, any concerns, questions?
Well, I have two comments I'd like to make. One is, in my view, of all the nonpartisan positions, this is the one that has probably the most of an ideological component to it, and from that perspective would be most worthy of being put to the voters, in the sense that it deals with questions of heavy regulation versus light regulation, government control versus property rights, more than, for example, the auditor's or the treasurer's job, which come pretty much just down to professional competence and honesty. As far as my personal experience goes, I wasn't here in 2001, but I was here when Mr. Miller was an incumbent, and I remember him refusing to meet with constituents. I remember him not showing up at a public hearing at the commissioners when there was a fairly controversial hearing. He sent one of his underlings to take the heat of the enraged constituents who showed up to complain, and the voters were able to make a change at the end of 4 years. With an appointee, I don't know what the barrier is and what a dismissal for cause of a county employee is, but I think there's a certain barrier, if not legal, at least moral, for the county commissioners just firing a department head because there are 50 people in the county who don't like what he does. If it goes to a vote, everybody in the county can have a say. So I think there is a certain justification for having things the way they are, not based on biases, but on actual things that happened in the past.
Well, I will share with you a testimony that we received, and that is someone came to us and said that they made a substantial campaign contribution to the current the DCD. She said the problem now she has is that if she wants to apply for something or a land use change and it is granted, will there be this sense that it was granted because she was a substantive donor? So when you have an elected official who has to get money to run, which is, we know, a reality, it then taints those decisions. Was the decision made at this level, or was there something about the donations? That is one of the primary reasons that every other jurisdiction in the United States appoints this position. So you remove that level of questionable politic, do you make special considerations for donors? So I believe it's an important, and the other thing is, you look at the DCD, they are charged with doing long-term planning. How do you do long-term planning when you are only in probably for 4 years and you might not be back? So, and when this went to an elected official, they split the department. So that environmental health was split into a different department. So now you have this cumbersome thing where you go to the DCD for this, and then you have to go to environmental health for that. If this was an appointed position, you could put those two departments back together.
Sue, do you have the last word on this before we move on?
It needs to be accountable to the people, this position. Kai made a very excellent point in that regard. I would ask you to reject Amendment 6.
Okay. And again, quick straw poll. Who thinks the DCD director should be elected? Raise your hand. Who thinks it should be appointed? We are a diversified group here. Now we're probably going to a couple that you are going to be terming.
The next two, you can probably just roll right over.
Roll right over, but we got a few minutes.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any concerns. These are what you're going to call housekeeping amendments. They seem straightforward. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning the interpretation of the Clallam County Home Rule Charter. This amendment would require charter interpretations to afford Clallam County those powers conferred to the charter counties under state law and this home rule charter. And why is this then, if it's so obvious, being proposed?
We were told by our church that the housekeeping measure needs to be done.
Yes.
So we unanimously said yes.
Unanimously said yes.
And then this is one of those things that need to be done. I don't know why it had to come to a charter review commission. It should have, the attorney, prosecutor's office could have gone to the commission and said you need to clean up the charter, put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
Sue, any other comment on that?
No, other than it just clarifies it and keeps it clean according to the attorney. So it's a housekeeping measure.
Good. Any further questions on that one? And then we go to the last, which is interesting.
Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, it really doesn't relate to the amendments, but why are we voting on these in the primary election, and will we see them again in the general election?
They'll only be on the
They'll only be
November
on
ballot.
the
Because there's,
Is that,
I don't know, I don't have a technical answer for you, Ted, except that it's always on the November ballot. Because there's no primary issue about it, but I don't know. I don't know. It's just historically, they're always on the general ballot.
And that could also make sense that that tends to be a...
but normally they're on the general?
They're always on the general ballot in November.
And for better government, that makes sense. The general ballot always has a much higher turnout, so...
And because it's only a year's term for the Home Rule Charter Commission, the items that go on the ballot have to be completed by a certain time frame, which is roughly August. So
We met last night.
yes, but that's for issues going on the 2016 ballot.
All right, well, thanks everybody for hanging around. Did you have something to say quick, Dick?
Yeah, I think that it goes on the general ballot, because not everybody gets the primary ballot in some elections.
Yeah, that'd be an increased cost too, because you have to put it out. The last one, and thanks everyone for staying and for you two wading through it with us. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning Charter Review Commission members' one-year term in office. This amendment would cause the commissioners' one-year term to begin on the first day of January instead of the beginning of the day of the election. And again, the reasoning there.
The way the charter is written right now, you have this election and then you have to have it certified. So by the time the charter has its meeting, it's Christmas week and it's hard to get together. And so this makes it crisp and clean, start January 1. And, you know, even now, there was some debate by the prosecutors to when our term. He said our term ended October 30th. Previous commissions I'd been on, our term ended in December. So this will make a nice crispy 1 year, January 1.
Good. Ditto?
Ditto.
Any comments on that? Well, first of all, was there? I don't see them being that controversial against each other. Let's give our panel a great round of applause.
I want to thank our panel, but Maggie, you were on the commission also. Yes, ma'am. Colleen was on the commission also, and those two members probably are the reason that we got involved this year, because they said you need to know.
And to their credit, were excellent on giving us reports all the time on what you were doing.
It was not a secret. Stephanie is there with her camera every meeting. Thanks to Stephanie.
Yeah.
We were pleased to have her.
You know, to all of you who came this morning, you get your ballots, you're really informed, you know what we're talking about, you know how important the charter is. What are we doing next week, Ann?
Yeah, next week, how do I say this? I hope, and I should know, I've been checking my emails, we may have a, how do I say this? Because until it's confirmed, we may have a legislative announcement here at the PABA, state legislative announcement here at the PABA tomorrow. Would be A1 above the fold. So that's all I want to say, because I'm close to getting that get.
That's next week.
That's next
week, so.
Right, so watch your announcements. It's
Andrew has the secret, so there you go.
It's a thing going on in legislation that could involve what's going on here, and we would have a direct person here with that. So
and we will have a discussion.
Initiatives. So having a charter review commission is only one way to amend the charter. You all have within the scope of your opportunities, you could amend it by promoting an initiative at any time. You don't have to wait for a charter review commission if you think there should be a significant change. I have served on all but one of the charters. Some people think that's because I have a flat learning curve. But actually I do because I really enjoy listening to what people want to have happen and having some discussion about county government, because it's not really the general across the dinner table conversation. So I'm looking forward to addressing the amendments that we have on the table here. I do draw your attention, I hope that you all got this voter pamphlet, which came from the state, and that includes all the pros and cons for all of the charter amendments that were written by the Charter Commission members. So what do you want us to do with the mic here, Andrew?
So very good. We'll put the mic on the table. I'll read the First Amendment. We'll go through them and see if we have any questions, concerns, comments. Amendment number 1. The Clallam County Charter Review Commission proposes an amendment to the Clallam County Home Rule Charter concerning election of county commissioners to the Board of County Commissioners. This amendment would require each commissioner to be nominated and elected solely by their district. This is a change where now the commissioner is replacing the provision that allows each commissioner to be elected at large by countywide majority during the general election. So members, any questions or concerns on this amendment? Scott?
Did any of the commissioners provide testimony on whether they favor or oppose this amendment?
No. All of it. keep us on our toes, and we're just going to go right straight into that unless there's an announcement that someone would like to make. Cherie.
Tomorrow morning, the government affairs meeting right here.
That was an important announcement. You all got that. So here we go, and there's one thing that I have to ask of you. He would like you to talk into the microphone this morning. She would like you to talk into the microphone. So if we can do that, Andrew.
Yeah, just keep in mind what's great now is we're being filmed and the entire world can see us, so let's be heard. We have something to say. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, members and guests, press, esteemed Charter Review Commissioners, good morning and welcome to another beautiful day in Port Angeles. And we know here our beauty is unique. But you know what? Our form of county government is fairly unique in the country and not that common in the state of Washington. We are a home rule county. We have charter review. What does that mean? We, the citizens, elect representatives by our district, and they can forward policy changes to the county review for us to vote on. In a sense, we have a county where we, the citizens, through representation, are quasi-legislative. What are the amendments? Were there controversies or different sides to the ones being proposed? How did that come about? Today, not only do we have two commissioners who served on the executive board, but they tended to be a little opposite on their viewpoints on some of the amendments, which is why we asked them here today. So how this forum is going to work, we're again counting on you, the membership, to get involved. Each of the commissioners will talk for several minutes.
In the county that has said we want to talk about the charter, so you get a gold star for at least caring about these amendments that are on the ballot. So I wanted to share with you, I'm Norma Turner. I've lived here since 1970. When we came, we put everything we owned on the line for my husband to start a small business. He was the first pediatrician in the entire county. In fact, when we first came here, the only pediatricians were in Bremerton. So it's been an interesting ride, and we're glad we're here. So I wanted to give you a little historical perspective on the charter. And that it was in 1889 that Washington State set up the current county governance system. And then in 1948, they passed a law which allowed for home rule charters. King County, and that was because they got pushed by King County. So King County was the first charter county, and that was in 1968. Interesting enough, Clallam County was the second charter in the state to become a charter county. And it's not been a big popular thing because even now there's only a total of 7. There have been 7 counties that have tried to pass a home rule charter unsuccessfully. So the first thing that happened here was in 1975, they elected what they called freeholders, and they created the charter, and it was adopted in 1976, and it was accepted with 50.1% of the vote. So then the interesting thing to know is that there are different ways you can amend the charter. And in 1980, the first amendment was submitted by the commissioners, which they're allowed to do. Then in 1981, there were 3 amendments to the charter. Those all came about by citizens.
On any perspectives they have on the general process. Then we'll go through one amendment at a time, field any questions or concerns that the members have. Does everybody have or want a copy of the voter's guide with the script in there? So nicely supplied for us by the Peninsula Daily News. So with that, let's introduce the 2 commissioners. They're no strangers to this group or the county. Susan Forde, welcome. And Norma Turner, welcome. And I guess I have to designate somebody, so Susan, do you want to start off with any perspectives or issues you'd like to tell us beforehand?
Yep. How do you want to do this?
Hand you the microphone, you can start.
Yeah, that would be
Great.
easier. Oh, whatever.
There we go.
everybody, and welcome. My name is Sue Forde, as Amber said. I've lived here on the Olympic Peninsula for over 25 years. My husband and I live on acreage in Squim. I ran for the Charter Review Commission the last time, and I was elected and served, and I ran again this time and was elected. Thanks to you all with the most votes total overall. And the reason that I ran this time is because I've talked to a lot of people on the peninsula over the years and kind of gotten feedback about our home rule charter. We have a unique situation, one of 7 counties, as Andrew may have mentioned, where we have a home rule charter which gives us government closest to the people. And I like to quote Article 1, Section 1 of our state constitution, which says, all political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. That's what I ran on, that's what I was elected for, and so that has been the goal through the process of listening to citizens come before us, talking to citizens on the street, getting comments into the charter, and deriving from that the issues that will be before you on the ballot. There were many more issues that came before us. Many. In fact, last night was our last meeting that we had, and on the board there were probably 25 issues that we were unable to really get out onto the ballot. One of the reasons I think for that was because we had 8 years between the last Charter Review Commission meeting and this one. And that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing today on the ballot. The last time we had a lengthy time like that, I think there were 17 issues on the ballot. This time we have 8, plus we were carrying over several to next year. So with that, I will pass this on to Norma for an introduction, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Norma.
Where this goes. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. You are the first group